Welcome to my podcast, Today's Dream, Tomorrow's Reality. My name is Vicki Poole. I'm a master transformational coach and hypnotist specializing in habit change. And the podcast is sponsored by the Enlightened Peach. And it's all about embracing our mosaic life. And some of you may ask, what is a mosaic life anyway? Well, it is recognizing that all the pieces of our life, the good, the bad, the indifferent, have all come together to make us who we are. Change any one thing and we are different. With that in mind, I invite you to embrace your perceived imperfections and celebrate who you are. This podcast is unedited and raw, just like life. And I am your host, and I have a special guest that I'll introduce you to in just a moment. Before I do, I would like to ask you to do me a solid, and that is to leave a comment or a question for our guest or for me either. And also to remember to like, subscribe, and share. I have amazing guests on my podcast, and the only way I can get their voice out there to a broader space is with your help. So remember, leave a comment, ask a question, like, subscribe, and share. So now let's get started. So this lovely lady right here is Lillian Sue, and we don't really know each other, but we did connect through a mutual group that we're in, and it's called Living Your Yes Life, and they had a podcast palooza where anybody that had a podcast could put their information in there, and the ones who felt it resonated could ask to be guest. And so it's been a while in the making because it was April when we were there, and it's just the schedule has been crazy for you and for I. So this is the first chance we got to work together. So I'm super excited to get to know you and share you with my audience. So if you don't mind, just give a little short clip of who you are, and then we'll just get started with getting to know you on a deeper level.
Sure. Thanks for having me, Vicki, by the way. So, as Vicki mentioned, my name is Lillian. I'm a PR coach and publicist. And what I do in my line of work is I empower creative entrepreneurs, so your authors, your filmmakers, your women in business, fellow coaches, to push past their limiting beliefs such as fear, anxiety, and imposter syndrome that are holding them back from moving forward with their businesses and growing the way that they want to gain the confidence to harness the power of public relations in order to reach those goals and to build those really powerful relationships and connections with the media and their audiences. And I do this as a coach through one-on-one sessions where I sit down with my clients and I say to them, what's going on? How can I help? Where are you struggling? What hasn't been working? Where is it that you want to go in your business that you feel like you can't get there with what you're currently doing? And then we dive deeper into where are your fears and anxieties coming from that can stop you from moving forward? What's triggering them? And once we recognize that and we work through that in sessions together, then I give them some healthy coping mechanisms, mindset mantras, affirmations, and I lean into what I do for myself and my business as well with recommendations for meditations and self hypnosis as well to help them push past those limiting beliefs and continue moving forward. And I always say to them, this doesn't mean our work here together doesn't mean that you'll never feel these emotions again. But what it means is that the next time something triggers this in you, you'll be able to recognize it. You'll be able to give yourself grace as you're going through it, and you'll be able to push past it and to keep moving forward.
Beautiful. I love that. So let me ask you a question. So how did you get started in this? I mean, for one thing, when you were a little girl, were you wanting to write a book? Were you wanting to do all these things that you're now teaching people to do? Or when did that start?
It's interesting that we were talking about sort of childhood and a bit of my early life, because absolutely, my dream was to be a novelist.
Oh,
A
nice.
novelist and a marine biologist, actually, at one
Well, they go
point.
together very well.
And I was in high school, and I had a fantastic English teacher who said, "Hey, I came across a couple of competitions to enter into short story anthologies. You should try for them." And I
Ooh.
got published twice before I graduated high school. And
Wow. Well, stop a second. Stop, stop, stop. That's pretty damn impressive. You need to give yourself some more kudos for that. Don't pass by that too quick.
I really appreciate my English teacher for giving me that opportunity, right?
Yes.
Because up until that point, I was really just writing for fun.
Mm-hmm.
And while I had thoughts about getting published, this was, the early 2000s, self-publishing really wasn't a thing yet. And I remember my older brother saying to me, he said, if you're going to rely on a publisher to pick your writing up, you're going to be waiting a while, like you're going to be starving. So you might want to figure out how to parlay that into something else. So when I was in college, my major was English and communications, and I came out in the marketing and advertising side of
Mm.
things. And I thought to myself, well, I've always loved storytelling. And throughout all this, I was just writing for myself for fun, poetry, fan fiction, and all of that sort of thing. And I thought, I've always loved storytelling. What if I could parlay that into a career where I help other people get their stories out there?
Mm-hmm.
I never gave up on my dream of writing, but it landed on the back burner because I thought, let me learn more about how to help other people get their stories out there and to find their audiences.
Yeah.
And through that, actually, while I was in college, I was looking for in the States, you would call it paid internships
Mm-hmm.
for work experience. Up here in Canada, we refer to that as co-op work experience. And I said to myself, well, no one's going to hire me if they can't first see what I can do. So let me figure out how to build a portfolio. So in the old days, I started cold calling, 40 to 50 companies, cold calling and cold emailing them on a daily basis just to see who would give me a shot
Wow,
to
that's a
build.
lot of work.
It was, yeah, but I
Yeah.
thought, if I want to prove to people that I can do this, I need to build that portfolio. And if I want
So,
to build that portfolio, I have to get out there.
so what's included in the portfolio? What do you do for that? Because I'm not familiar.
Well, at the time, I was focusing more so on the copywriting and social media side of things. So I
Okay.
was doing social media strategy for folks, running their campaigns. On the copywriting side, it was folks that needed a website. I did some print collateral for a client that sold bathroom cabinetry, stuff like that.
Okay.
That's how I sort of cut my teeth. And that's kind of how I started my business. It really just came out of a desire to go, hey, I need to build myself a portfolio.
Hmm.
And throughout that time, probably for about the first 6 years I was running my business for as a freelancer, I had entrepreneurs come to me and say, hey, is public relations something you do? Because I have a press release I want to send out. Is that something you can help me out with? And it got to the point where I was at a bit of a crossroads moment personally. At that time, I was struggling to pay my bills in my business. I had just gotten engaged and we were moving home to plan our wedding.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought, you know what? Well, let's see here. I have a lot of people asking me to if I did PR. I'm getting tired of telling great people no because I still want to work with them. So I thought, let's see, since I'm going home anyway, let's see if I can change the focus of my business, if I can cut my teeth and get some experience with some local firms, see if I like it. So I went from interning to subcontracting for a few PR agencies in town. And that's how I really fell in love with public relations. I was doing campaigns for folks in the food and beverage area, tourism and hospitality, sports, indie film and television was one I really fell in love with.
Ooh, nice.
And then I branched off from that and started doing it on my own. And when the pandemic hit, yet another crossroads moment came up because I had quite a few entrepreneurs say to me, I would love to work with you on a campaign, but I can't afford it. And at the same time, I had all this experience of all these years I had spent working with agencies where I noticed so many of the clients that would come to us, we would spend so much of our time rather than like actually working together, we would be explaining to them, this is what PR is, this is
Oh,
how it
yeah.
works, you know, this is the mindset that you need in order to really make it work for you, because so many of them were coming to us with like unrealistic expectations about
Don't most
the
people show up with unrealistic expectations on just about everything?
true.
Holy smokes,
Oh
yes.
yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So, you know, I had all of this knowledge, and people were telling me they couldn't afford campaigns. So I thought, is there a way for me to still work with them, but impart this knowledge that I have onto them so that they can make better decisions? And
Yeah.
myself and my PR colleagues have, you know, an easier time working with them because we're not spending a lot of time explaining a lot of things to them because they already understand that, right? And that's kind of how coaching came about. But at the same time, I also went through a bit of a like a just revolutionary mindset shift
Mm-hmm.
for
Tell us more
myself
about that.
and my business. Well, I was really struggling with my chronic illness at that time,
With your
and
what?
chronic illness.
Okay.
Yeah. And this was flare-ups would happen whenever I got too anxious. So I'd be
Mm.
feeling a lot of anxiety. And what would happen is that it would jolt me out of bed in the middle of the night, and I would just be in pain for hours.
Wow.
And I couldn't get rid of it. I couldn't get rid of it. I couldn't get rid of it. And I was trying to seek out alternative medicine and stuff like that because my GP, you know, had nothing for me. He couldn't help me. And at the time, I realized that every time I had a flare up, it was because my mind was racing. I kept going through all these what if scenarios and all this negativity and all this anxiety and everything. And I realized like, hey, I can't live this way anymore. You know, I'm losing sleep. I'm in pain all the time. I can barely eat, which for someone like me who loves to cook and bake, having to, you know, being unable to enjoy even the things I could normally eat was really hard for me to deal with,
So do
you
you
know.
mind if I ask what's the chronic illness?
The acronym is SIBO, so SIBO. It stands for small intestine bacterial overgrowth.
Okay.
So in layman's terms, what happens is that digestively, depending on certain things that you eat or even the speed that I was eating at, the bacteria would go haywire. And every time it did, it would cause really, really just bad heartburn.
Okay.
Um, and there really was, I mean, when a flare up happened, all I could do was ride it out. You know, there really wasn't like something fast acting where it would just calm everything down and then I could go back to sleep. So I was dealing with all of this and recognizing that I had a lot of anxiety over this new direction in my business. You know, I wanted to show up and add value, but I kept having this iron grip control on what I wanted people's responses to be. And I would obsess
Mm.
over the fact that, you know, I'm not getting responses or these people aren't understanding where I'm coming from and this, that,
Yeah.
and the other. And I finally said, I need help. So I went to a business coach and I went to my mindset coach, who I'm still with today. And it's been almost 3.5 years now. And she sat down with me and she said, where do you feel like this fear of a lack of control is coming from for you when it comes to your business? Is it rooted in something personal, or did you have other experiences in your life that maybe has led you to believe this is how I have to be in order to be successful? So we went digging. I did meditation with her. She helped me come up with some self-hypnosis tracks that I still use to this day. And we did EFT as well, so
Mm-hmm.
tapping. And I realized that this desire for iron grip control over my business came from the fact that as a child, I didn't have a choice in anything. I didn't have control. I was being controlled and being dictated to, that this was how I had to live my life. And in many ways, that was sort of the catalyst that pushed me to build my own business, because I was raised that getting a government job or working for a company for 40 years and retiring and getting a pension was the only way to be.
Mm.
So I essentially built this business. It was, the knee jerk was to rebel against
Yeah.
what I was raised with, and, the generational trauma of, you have to be this way, we won't support you or how
Mm-hmm.
you want to live your life unless you are this way. And that was it. And when I recognized that where my need for control was coming from, Vicky, it was like the brightest light bulb had finally turned on in my life. And when I recognized that, and I recognized that I could let go of that and still be okay and still live every single day feeling accomplished with what I've been able to do on a daily basis, I thought, this is great. Like, this is how I should have been living for the last 10 to 15 years.
Yeah.
And when I got to that point, that's when I finally realized this is the kind of thing. Like, I had to get here. I had to be able to walk the walk and talk the talk if I'm going to help my clients get through the same thing, because I couldn't very well say to them, this is why you should share your story in the media, when I'm not doing it myself.
Right. Right.
Because what I do is
Lead by
almost
example.
exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. And I recognize that what I do is almost immaterial, because the PR industry is huge. I know I have colleagues locally, I have colleagues all over the world, and but what will get someone to work with you is if they actually sit down and get to know who you are. So what
Yeah.
is it that I bring to the table that's different? Why do I do this? And it wasn't until I started getting out there and sharing my story where I felt like, okay, now I can actually sit down and guide my clients through that, because I know what that's like. It's not as though I'm telling them to do things I would never do myself, because if I was to tell them to walk the walk and I didn't do that myself, I'd be a hypocrite.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I'm a hypnotist and a transformational coach. And so this is similar to some of the things that I help a lot of my clients with, and the thing that's amazing to me is most of the time people don't even recognize, they're stuck in this place, and it's all this external stuff to them, she did this, I can't do that, they won't let me do this. It's all external until you start working with them and you get them to go inside, and it's like, holy crap, I'm the problem.
That is kind of the other thing I had to learn too. And I teach my clients all the time, where it's like, you control what you can control.
Yeah.
And the moment that you take control of what's actually in your capability to do, there is freedom to that,
Oh yeah.
because then you take ownership of how you choose to show up, how you add value. And no, you can't control who responds to you or how they respond to you. But what I say to my clients is a motto I live by daily, and that is, the people that are ready to hear what you have to say and the people that resonate with your story, those are the people that you want to hear from. Everyone
Right.
else, it doesn't matter.
That's right. There's enough people in the world, and even if you only got 1% of the entire population, you'd have more people to work with than you knew what to do with. So you don't have to be trying to get everybody. And so I think we do ourselves a disservice if we're constantly trying to pull in people that are struggling away from us, get the ones that are ready. Because what is that saying, that when the student is ready, the teacher will come? And a
Mhm.
lot of times people need what we got. They're just not ready to break free and let go, because there's a lot of responsibility that comes with when you take on knowing that you're in control. Then now you don't have that excuse anymore of what everybody else has done, and you have to really, take a lot of work to look inside and say, okay, how can I change and how can I be different? And a lot of people don't want to go there.
It's definitely uncomfortable work to
Yeah.
sit there and be introspective. I mean, from a very young age, my brother is quite a bit older than I. He's 13 years older than me, so I always like to joke that he was my third parent. And he taught me from a very, very young age. He said, in life, about 2% of, it's what happens to you. He said the other 98 is how you choose to deal with it. And
Pretty
that's
smart
something.
for that age.
Oh yeah, and it's like that's something that has always stayed with me,
Hmm.
because it's true.
It's very
That is
true.
something that's within your control on
Yeah.
what you choose to do about it. And my philosophy is like, because when we're talking, what I do is business, right? What I do is marketing. What I do is, as I say, storytelling and relationship building. And for a lot of entrepreneurs, I understand how scary that is because, well, first of all, you're working in 5 to 10 different places in your business at once.
Yeah.
For most entrepreneurs, you don't have an infinite budget to do things like invest in your marketing, invest in your own education so that you can learn better how to do these things. And it's natural to want results for the
Hmm.
money that you spend, right?
Right.
But with marketing, I joke, I know a lot of folks in marketing and we joke about this all the time. We say, if we worked in guarantees, none of us would eat. We wouldn't, because it comes down to everybody's business is different. Everyone's
Hmm.
goals are different. What their methodologies to reach those goals are different. And also who they are as people are different. That's why I'm always advocating for the fact that, yes, there is a framework to public relations. Everybody needs to know what they're going to tell people. So you need that pitch. You need that media kit that shows them, you don't want them waiting on a photo of you, as an example, right? You
Hmm.
need to have all that stuff ready. You need to know who you want to get in front of. Because if, you're an entrepreneur that sells vegan bath products, chances are somebody who covers software engineering is not going to want to interview you. So
Right.
that's not the person that you want to get in
Or the
front of. So
cattle industry either.
exactly, exactly. Absolutely. So, you want to get in front of the right people, but
Yeah.
outside of that, how you do that, how you approach people, the stories that you share with them in interviews, like what we're doing right now,
Hmm.
all of that is up to the individual person. So I really try to break my clients out of the mold of not just the limiting beliefs, but out of this is what the industry says you should be doing,
Right. Yeah.
you know?
And that's a hard thing for a lot of people to step outside that box just a little bit, because that can be scary too. And if they haven't seen somebody else do it, even though they have this brilliant idea, if they haven't seen somebody else do it, a lot of people will just kind of sit on it because there's no proof there and they're afraid to try.
Absolutely, absolutely. But there's always room to grow, right? And
Yes,
when it
definitely.
comes to getting out there and actually doing the thing, somebody has to do the thing first in order for you to have that example to follow. So why not be the person that leads by example? Because I always say to my clients, what is worse is being complacent in
Yeah.
your business, being complacent and then looking back 5, 10, 15, 20 years down the road and regretting
Yeah.
that there's so many things that you could have done sooner. There's so many ways in which you could have grown and learned that you were too afraid to try. And instead, you toiled, you struggled, and you stayed stuck because emotionally, that was easier than pushing past where those fears and that anxiety came from.
Yeah. So I liken it to like if you're wanting to be healthy and fit and you go to the gym a couple of times and it makes you sore, so you don't go back because that's not easy. And so what happens to you over time if you're not doing any of that stuff is your body starts breaking down a little bit. So you can either take the pain of working out a little bit till it gets easier, um, or you can let your body start declining to where you can't get it back. And so it's like all the years that you waste with not getting outside of your comfort zone and doing the things that you know you need to do, they're just not easy for you. Man, the regret has got to be so intense when you get older, right?
Sure. I actually had a great conversation with a young woman who was an author and she was trying to build her business up and everything. And she said that she had started working with somebody on her social media marketing. And as it turned out, they did not deliver the results that she wanted. They were not communicative. They were not. And she said, you know what? I had a feeling walking into this that it
Mm,
wouldn't be the right deal for me, but she's like, I know why I signed it anyway, and I signed it because I just wanted to save money.
mhm.
That's something that I encounter a lot of with the entrepreneurs that I speak to. And it's, believe you me, I do understand it because I'm in the same line of business myself. It can be really, really difficult to be strategic about where you invest your time, your energy, and your budget. But at the same time, when you get burned with things like that, it's even harder to get back up on the horse and go,
Yeah,
why should I continue investing in my education or investing in this part of my business?
yeah, yeah, I can see that. So what do you tell somebody when it comes to that?
You mean someone who's kind of been through it and been burned, or
Yeah, that's been burned, and then how do they, because there's probably a lot of people that are watching or listening that have been there, right? So then they're tapped out a little bit on the finances and then scared to spend the little bit that they've got for the same results. So is there something that you can tell them that might help them to get a little more clarity on how to move forward, some let go of some of that anxiety that might be hanging out in there?
one of the first things that I ask the entrepreneurs in my audience that have been through that is, okay, is there anything, if you had to do that opportunity over again, is there anything that you would do differently in terms of building out that strategy and really finalizing and solidifying your goals?
Hmm.
Because one of the things that I tell them too is that there is absolutely no shame in just focusing on one piece of it for now. You can build a strategy and focus on one part of it for now. You don't have to do everything at once because most folks don't have a team of like 5 to 10 people to manage all of these different aspects for them. I
Right.
said, what you can do is you can build out the big picture. Like if you imagine a blueprint or like a brainstorm map, and you just focus on one piece of it right now because you say to yourself, okay, within the next 6 months to a year, this is the area that I really want to focus on growing. And then when it comes to the other thing, I think a lot of folks make mistakes on, and it's natural to make mistakes on this, is really figuring out how somebody can align with you to work with you on reaching those goals, whether it's in PR, whether you're talking email marketing or building a website or doing social media. It's really about sitting down and figuring out, okay, like, take price off the table for a minute. In an ideal world, what do I want this other party to have to make me feel empowered and positive and excited about moving forward and working together? What do I need to see from them? What are some of the parameters I should have in place to make sure that this is a great working relationship? Because it takes both sides to set up that framework and set up that framework so that you are both meeting each other's expectations, and that when you have issues, you're able to come together and work together,
Mm-hmm.
get to that goal. Things never get personal, things never get heated, because you are, first of all, coming together with respect for one another and what your expertise is and everything. And the toughest part when you've been burned is being willing to be open, and being
Yeah.
open to learning and growing and understanding that everyone has different approaches. And sometimes if it doesn't work, it doesn't mean that they were being deliberately malicious, but that maybe perhaps they had a different approach. And the earlier that you encounter that and you're willing to verbalize that in your relationship, the easier it'll be. Because then, if it's not a match, you haven't spent all this time and energy and money working with them when it's never going to work.
Right. I know I hired a coach one time, and this has been years ago, and we only had like 2 or 3 sessions, and it was just like there was this disconnect between us. It was like, I couldn't, I don't know. It seemed like the information she was giving me was stuff that I already knew. And then when I would talk to her about things, it was like that it felt like we were button heads, you know? And so I talked to her about it, and we decided to just dissolve and not work together anymore. But what would have happened before I became started really working on my mindset and everything, if I had been in that situation, I would have stayed because I didn't want to hurt her feelings. I would have stayed even though it wasn't benefiting me, it wasn't helping me. And I really feel like, since there was such a disconnect, she wasn't comfortable either, because you know how that can come across even on this kind of screen, right? And so to me, it's really important for people to remember that even in that kind of environment, you have to have your boundaries, you have to exercise them and speak up for yourself, because the other person probably, like in any relationship, because it's still a relationship, they don't have a clue what you're thinking inside. You got to be able to tell them, because nobody's a mind reader, right? And so I love what you were just sharing about being able to step into this place that, even though you've been burned, you're open and you get help, and you make it work, and you find what does work. So that's pretty cool.
It's something that I really advocate for with clients that come to me who have had those experiences where they're even like, I went through a PR campaign, I got on a bunch of radio shows, and I had fun and it was great, but it didn't translate to the results that I wanted. And I think it didn't translate to the results that I wanted because I didn't feel comfortable speaking up and telling the publicist or the PR firm that this is what I wanted to do. And I
Mm,
always say to them, there is, unfortunately, with every industry, and my industry is no exception, where there will be people that will promise big things.
yeah.
They'll promise big things and they'll promise big results, and there are folks that will buy into that and end up disappointed, because at the end of the day, I always say to them, we're not mind readers, And anyone in this industry who is really passionate about what it is that you're doing, whatever it is, will want to hear from you on, hey, where do you want to take this?
Yeah.
Because it's your brand, it's your reputation, and it's your stories that are going out there. And we want to make sure that we're doing the best that we can to put your best foot forward. Like I had a client who said, hey, you know what? My Wi-Fi connection's really bad. I don't think I can do any video interviews for this media campaign. Can you not pitch me to anything like that? I said, hey, fine, no problem, no problem. We can, work around that. But had she not felt confident enough to tell
I
me
see
that,
that. Yeah.
I would have spent a lot of time and energy getting her the wrong kinds of opportunities, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So what I try to do through my coaching is really to empower my clients to not only have that knowledge base of this is how everything works, but to get confident enough where you're actually able to speak up on, hey, this is where I actually want to take this. And if that agency or that publicist or the marketing freelancer is the right fit, they're the ones that are willing to listen to you and go, okay, this is what you want to do. Let's work within these parameters.
Yeah. Yeah. That's beautiful. That really sets it up to see exactly how not speaking up can be detrimental to what's going on, because that would have been pretty significant to have all these different things that they had to have their Wi-Fi spot on and not be able to show up. Yeah, so thank you for that. That definitely helps me to visualize what would be going on. So now, right before we got on, you were telling me that you were about to release a book. So I don't want everything to get by without us bringing attention to your book. So please share a little bit about how you started writing your book before you even talk about where it's at now and about the releasing. I really want to hear a little bit about your process.
Sure. Yeah. So, as I mentioned earlier, I was published back in high school. So this is kind of my career and my aspirations coming full circle now.
Yeah,
Uh,
congratulations on that too.
Thanks. I appreciate that.
For
So,
those that can't see, you can only hear, when she started talking about this, her face lit up and she has the biggest smile on her face. So you can tell this is a heartfelt thing. And I just wanted to let the people that can't see you to see you, right?
yeah, I appreciate that. Well, this actually started a few years back now because I was spending a lot of time with authors and doing PR for authors and stuff like that and learning about the publishing industry and everything. And I have quite a few folks come to me and say, following you on social media is great. I always get fantastic tips and everything. But what I'm not getting is kind of the whole picture of what PR is and how to use it in all these different parts. And I don't have anything to kind of refer back to. Like if I had something to kind of flip through and refer back to, it'd be really helpful. So I started thinking, what are some of the key components of my knowledge and my experience that I could put in a book that I don't see elsewhere in the marketplace. And I did a little bit of research and everything, and pretty much everything else that I'd seen on Amazon and places like that kind of fit into two categories. Either you had your textbooks that were educating students on how to be publicists, or you had the books that were more geared towards, here's your Fortune 500 company, or here's if like you're a publicist doing PR for the government, right? And I thought, where's the book for the creative entrepreneur, the nonprofit, the startup, like all these
Yeah,
fantastic folks that I had spent over a decade working with are getting left behind.
yeah,
So I thought, let's see if I could put a book together that would help guide them through all of it. And the big piece of it, I think that makes it really different is not only do I go into every area of like a PR campaign and actually give them even tool recommendations. Hey, you want to save time on researching for media contacts? Here's a few tools you could use. I spend a long time talking about mindset and the things that can trigger your fear, trigger imposter syndrome, how burnout comes about. And I have the book is chock full of, mindset mantras and affirmations that I use myself on a daily basis, that I use with my clients. I've got examples in that book directly from my clients of campaigns that I've worked on and everything that have seen success. And just really focusing on, for the entrepreneur, this is how you can make it work for you. Like, you don't have to spend $20,000 on a campaign, and you don't have to have an audience in the millions in order to really make this work for you. And it's my goal to actually get this book out into the hands of as many nonprofits as possible, your executive directors, your directors of event planning, and the marketing folks and everything. And then there's the creative entrepreneurs and the startups and just small businesses and everything, because these are the folks that everybody else would leave behind.
Yeah.
And I've been in marketing in general for almost 2 decades now, and one thing I've learned this entire time is that these folks need to learn how to utilize marketing and PR as well. These folks deserve support too, you
Yeah.
know. And it's also why in addition to releasing the book, it's called The Powerful Publicity Prescription, because I wanted to
Ooh,
do
I like that.
alliteration a little
Yeah,
bit.
I
Yeah.
like that.
So I'm releasing a companion glossary and a workbook with it,
Okay.
because, I don't just want people to read it and then put it aside. I
Right,
want you to
right.
read it and start brainstorming, hey, this is what I can do with it, right?
Yeah.
So it's my goal to get it out there, to do more speaking engagements with it and everything, and just um, continuing to get that, because I feel like in my business, the cornerstones of my business are education and empowerment.
Yeah.
And for me, getting out there and talking to folks and having my book and everything is the best way to do that, because they get multiple touch points, right? They don't just get to hear from me, they have the book too. And when they
Right.
get the book, they can always reach out to me for coaching, or if they have questions or anything like that. And it's my goal, actually, for anybody who buys more than one copy, I'm going to donate one to a nonprofit.
Oh, nice. Wow, I'm quite impressed. That's pretty cool.
I
So,
appreciate that. Yeah.
how did you decide to do that?
Well, I mean, I actually, when I was writing the book, the writing part wasn't hard, because I had spent years kind of focusing on the same content. Like, every
Mm-hmm.
Monday is mindset, right? And then for the rest of the week, I'm talking strategy and tips and everything. So I sort of um, planned out the book that way, with how the chapters would go, starting from the history of PR, and then the last chapter is, okay, you have had an interview go live. Let's talk about how to promote it properly so people actually see that you've done it. And that starts to up the trust factor in terms of who you are and how you're showing up, and how they know that, hey, the podcast that I support and that I trust actually believes in this person. Maybe I should check them out, right? So I kind of structured it that way. And then I thought, I'm going to self-publish this, because it is a lot better now than it was 20 years ago. There's a lot more tools, and it's a lot more accessible, because I didn't want people to have to wait for years for it to come
Yeah.
out.
Yeah.
And I also really wanted to have some say in what I wanted to do with it, and in terms of, taking it to speaking gigs and selling it direct on my website and things like that. And what actually really helped was, in the middle of the editing process, I signed on to do a crowdfunding program. And it was myself and about 7 of us that kind of went through a crowdfunding program that taught us, how to put together a crowdfunding campaign, the sorts of perks that you could put together for people to kind of not pre-order, but almost pre-order the
Yeah.
book.
Mm-hmm.
Really talking about how to network strategically and growing your brand that way. And it's really funny because I look back on it and I think, if it wasn't for wanting to do the book or to crowdfund the book, I definitely would not have gone out and changed the way that I network. I
Mm-hmm.
probably wouldn't have started the speaking part of my career, right? So it's all sort of connected in terms of just sharing more of that knowledge and education on what PR is and how it can help people to really empower them to think about incorporating it into their marketing strategies and actually take action, instead of going through yet another webinar where because I've heard them and they say, that was fantastic. I learned a lot. Where I get stuck is I don't know how to apply what I've learned to what it is that I'm doing.
Right.
So it's my goal to bridge that gap with this book, with my services, and with any webinars or workshops that I do. It's all about tailoring and customizing the world of PR to fit for other people. Because it's one thing I've noticed is when it comes to the big conferences and the events, email, social media, digital, all of those marketing disciplines have a seat at the table. It's about time that public relations carves out its own. And that's really my goal, to get out there and educate as many people as possible.
I feel certain that you'll do it. So I have a question for you. We're getting close to time. So you were in that place where your body was kind of fighting you with all of the with the disease and all that, and you were really struggling and wanting to do something else. And then now here you are with being able to teach everybody and taking all that beautiful knowledge that you've learned and figuring out what people are really needing, and you've done that for you, right? So how does it feel when you think about this journey that you've been on and how you've come from that place and landed right where you're at in such a beautiful, helpful place?
It's incredibly freeing.
Yeah.
Because Vicky, it took me years, over a decade, to realize how trapped I was, not just in terms of my physical health, but in terms of how my mental health was influencing the physical part of things.
Yeah.
And me feeling like I absolutely had to follow the industry standard in order to make a living.
Yeah.
Because if you look out there, there's really not anybody else doing PR coaching. You
Mm-hmm.
have the agencies and the firms that are doing all the big campaigns, and then you have the folks that are teaching people to be publicists. And then there's me. So this is something that was completely uncharted. I didn't have trailblazers that I could have model myself after
You're
and
being the
everything.
trailblazer.
Exactly. When I decided to change my business and go this route, is because, I don't like leaving people behind. When I
Yeah.
know that there's folks out there that are passionate about what they want to do, and they're dedicated to it, and they want to grow, and they're ready to take action. I don't want that, finances and the lack of services to be, and the lack of support to be the reasons why they don't move forward.
Yeah.
So it's so freeing to me to be in that mindset where every single day it's like I'm accomplishing something, I'm moving the needle forward, and I know that I'm going to get to where I want to be. I'm going to be on that stage. There's going to be 500 people in that auditorium, and I'm going to stand up there and give my keynote. I'm going to get that standing ovation because these people get it.
Yeah.
I'm finally in front, like reaching people where they're at. And it's so freeing to get to that point where I can celebrate that progress. Whereas before, for the, over a decade, I was beating up myself for not progressing more,
Right.
right?
As entrepreneurs, we tend to do, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think it's also something that as women we tend to do quite a bit more of
Yeah,
as
this
well.
is true.
Because we're conditioned to do all of the things.
Yeah,
Like
yeah,
we're supposed to do that. And to let go of those preconceived notions of this is how things have to be and this is how I have to make a living in this area because that's all the opportunity that's available to me. That's the other thing that I really try hard to impart on my clients is a lot of the times if there isn't an opportunity, that doesn't mean you can't make one.
that's right.
Like 3/4 of the speaking engagements I've done have been because I've built a relationship with somebody else and we said, "Hey, let's work together."
Yeah,
You know? And that's what makes it so much more rewarding when you're actually able to build the relationships that you want to build to get out in front of the right people. Because if I've learned anything in this business, it's that depending on an external platform like social media to get you in front of hundreds of thousands of people on a daily basis is unrealistic. You have to break out of that mold and ask yourself, where are the people I actually want to talk to spending more of their time?
hmm,
And how can I build that trust with them to the point where they're buying into what I'm saying so that they'll follow me, they'll support me, they'll buy from me, and they'll recommend me.
yeah,
It's not all going to be on social media. It's great for building your own audience, but there comes a time where that's going to plateau. And when that does, then you have to look at how do I want to expand my community? That's the other thing that I come across with entrepreneurs a lot. They feel a lot of them, women in particular, don't feel good about sharing their stories because to them it feels like they're selling something to strangers. So
mm,
I say to them, change your perspective a little bit and instead of looking at them as being strangers, find your common ground because everybody has something in common. And the more that you build that common ground, the more they become part of your community. And
yeah,
once they're a part of your community, then instead of looking at competing against each other, what you're doing is supporting each other. You're amplifying each other. So if you look at it that way, changing that perspective helps you get comfortable on the idea of, hey, I can actually share my story with people and not feel like I'm being judged, not feel like I'm being laughed at, not feeling like it's falling on deaf ears.
yeah, yeah. Beautiful. Well, thank you for that wonderful share. And it's been an amazing pleasure to have you here. Very eye-opening because that's the PR and all that stuff is one of the things that is so far out of my wheelhouse. And so thank you for all of that. And so I want to let all of our watchers, our listeners to know that in the description, I'm going to put the link to everything that you have. And I know your book's not out yet, but we can always add the link in later. We have the ability to just go in there and boop, pop something in there. So when it's out, just reach out to me and we'll add it in. So everybody will be able to peruse that and enjoy getting a little bit more knowledge about what they need to do moving forward.
I definitely will let you know when it's out, Vicky. And I appreciate this opportunity to chat with you. And honestly, anytime, anytime, if you want to have me back on, I'd love to come back.
All right, beautiful, beautiful. That sounds like a good thing. Well, I'm going to leave everybody with one of my favorite quotes that means a lot to me. The best way to predict the future is create it. So think about it. What are you creating? And with that, I will say farewell. Mwah.